I'm learning something new from them. It sucks. We all are in this kind of uncertain situation where we have to be away from people, but it's nice to still connect over Zoom and get to see those guys who I was seeing every day. So nice to learn from them and still keep up with them, even if we're not in the same place. Um, we're going to talk about facing off, right? And as a guy who didn't take face-offs in college, we're going to talk a lot about how facing off doesn't have to be a one-on-one battle, right? As the title suggested, a face-off, you should incorporate your wings. You can make it a full 10v10 endeavor, right? And what that does is it takes a lot of pressure off of your face-off guys, right? I mean, if you have the best, couple face-off guys in the country, you have the best guy, facing off is relatively easy, right? He wins the clamp, he pops it to himself, and you've got 80-90% possessions in a game. There's a few of those guys in the country, right? Whether you're at the high school level, Division 1, 2, or 3, there's only a few of those guys at every level. So what do you do if you don't have one of those guys, right? And that's what we're going to kind of dive into here. So we're going to, watch a few clips. If you've watched these before, you know that we've been using this Redwoods versus Chaos game for a lot of clips. I think that, there's a lot of takeaways from this. And even though it's hard because these guys are all, the top 1%, the best in the world, right? There's still a lot of things that we can learn from them, right? There's still, the basics of this game still come through, right? So, the first thing to recognize before we go into this is that the face-off in the PLL was different, right? The wings were a little closer. The field was 10 yards shorter, and the wings were shorter, so there wasn't as much, wiggle room there for them to, move around, right? So, they lined up a little differently. It's hard to see from the film here, right? But what we're going to talk about is how the wings get involved, what a face-off guy can do to keep it, a 50-50 ground ball, and then how to come up with it from there, right? So, Greg Granglian's going against Trevor Kelly here, and I actually spoke with Greg. He was, kind of to speak with me. I've learned a lot from him and other face-off guys over the last couple years. Is he said he knew that Trevor Kelly was a better clamper than him going into this game, or had a really strong first move. So what he did was he went from his feet to make sure that he could get his wings involved, because he trusted. He has Pat Harbison here and John Sexton's out of the screen. Two guys who are great off the wing and off the ground. And if he's on his feet, it becomes a 3-on-2 ground ball for a bit, right? So while we watch this first clip, right, he's just going to want to get the ball moving. And if you're teaching your guys, this is a really good way to make sure that you're not going to lose the ball forward. Because if you can keep the ball back in your defensive half, then you've got a chance. At least you've got to force them to clear the ball, right? So off this, he rakes the ball, and we can slow that down a little bit, so everyone can see that, right? And the ball, it's not that he knows exactly where the ball is. It's more that his opponent can't have complete control of the ball. So obviously Greg's, one of the best in the world at doing this, but even a guy who's not as good is going to be able to move the ball a little bit or stay athletic and stay on his feet while the other guy's on his knees. So the next thing he does, and we'll talk about a drill about this, at the end, is he turns and boxes out his opponent, right? He gets hit between the ball and his opponent and doesn't go for the ball immediately. What he does is really impressive, actually. He just keeps the ball on the ground, knowing that, soon, John Sexton and Pat Harbison are going to be involved in this, and then he knows that they feel like they have an advantage. Right. So, from a wing perspective, John Sexton does a really nice job here as the chaos short stick gets too close. He boxes him in, and he almost, probably a slight push in the back, but, doesn't really, it's going to be tough to call that. And he nudges him towards the pile. So while this guy thinks he has a free run and he's ahead of John gives him a little nudge. And now all of a sudden there's 3 guys tied up, in this pile, and John is still maintaining defensive responsibility. I think one of the most important pieces to this, if you are losing clamps, is, you want to be able to compete and make this a 50-50 ground ball, but you can't give up transition, right? If you're going to be losing faceoffs, you have to trust your defense. You have to, manufacture some other ways to win possessions, but you can't be giving up goals and transitions and great shots off of transition, because it's just going to wear out your defense, and it's just a backbreaker to give up goals off the faceoff, right? So John does a great job. He stays defensive, and we're actually going to see this scrum from another angle in a second, right? And as soon as he sees he has an angle to get to the ball, right, stays defensive and now makes a break and is able to get ahead of the pile and make a play here. And you go from, not winning a clamp and making it a ground ball, and all of a sudden you now have an advantage coming into the play here, right? So we see, as we talked about before, Grenlian does a great job of boxing out his guy, not going for the ball necessarily, but just making sure that Trevor Kelly can't get to the ball, right? We see John boxes his guy in, so he's the deepest guy right now in the faceoff. And the short stick, a lot of times, most places that you'll see, and most teams will have their short stick have a little more free reign to hunt the ball. So Pat's getting in here and looking to make a play on the ball. He doesn't have a defensive responsibility, so he keeps the ball alive, right? All of a sudden, you think that these guys should have the chaos guys should have a really good chance at getting this ball, right? There's three guys right here. Greg's on the ground and Sexton's on the outside, right? And this is where drilling this becomes really important, right? But ball squirts out, it stays alive. Pat does a good job of staying in the middle of it, and then John's able to scoop it up and get to the rack. So this next one, another option at the faceoff, if you're not winning, is if you have a long pole who can take a faceoff, is another great option. And the goal here is to make it even less of a 3-on-3 and to make it a full 10-on-10 faceoff, right? And some teams, you'll see if you've watched the college game the past couple of years, do a really good job of going from this right into a 10-man ride or into a 2 or 3 down ride to put pressure. And even if you're not going to force a turnover every time, what this does is allows them, in the shot clock era, to now be playing defense for only 60 seconds or 55 seconds or even 50 or 40 seconds if they have to sub all their guys, right? So it's not always about causing a turnover, but it is about putting pressure on them constantly throughout a game and making it tough for a faceoff guy to find a rhythm. And all of a sudden you're able to steal some possessions because guys throw the ball away. You ride the ball back. The faceoff guy jumps because he's trying to beat the pole so cleanly and not have to go back. There's hidden ways for you to win faceoffs without really winning clamps throughout the course of a game. So watching this one, John Sexton's taking one to give Greg a blow. Trevor wins it cleanly, but John does a good job of pursuing and not letting him turn upfield, right? And we see Brent Adams is right in the way to make sure that first he's now going weak-handed, right? He's turning to his left hand and into another wing guy with a pole chasing him. He'd rather go back. So as a Redwoods player, this is a win, and this is where you have to be, coaching your team and your face-off guys or your attackmen, that they're just as much a part of the face-off as the face-off guy, right? This is a team effort. It's a group effort. It can't be one-on-one. If you guys, you have to kind of incentivize them. If they want the ball, they have to be willing to ride and bust their ass throughout this to win the ball back a little bit. So Matt Cavanaugh and Jules Henenberg, Matt Cavanaugh, one of the best riding attackmen I think of all time, puts pressure on the goalie and then, continues to chase this pole. And while he's still going to get over the midfield line, he hesitates right here and doesn't exactly see what's in front of him, right? So now as he's clearing the ball, they've wasted 10 seconds, right? We see right here that, there's 42 seconds on the shot clock, which they've wasted 10. They still have a pole over. Their face-off guy is still subbing. So by the time they get all their guys on, they're playing offense with under 30 seconds against one of the best defensive teams in the league. And, in general, it's hard to score against good, really good defenses, which all these teams have in 20 seconds or 25 to 30 seconds, right? The other piece is that, he's meeting a pole here because he couldn't find a short stick because the Redwoods had a D-midi, a pole facing off, and another D-midi already on the field, and the Chaos had to sub a face-off guy. their man down or their support is on the other side of the field right now. So there's a pole right here and a pole bringing it over, and the Redwoods are ready to meet this and continue to challenge it, right? So he gets here, the attack doesn't do a great job working for him, but at the same time, this is where you've coached your attack to ride really hard and put pressure down when the ball comes back. You coach your defense to don't let, the opponent off the hook when someone carries the ball over. So even if they carry the ball, the clear technically statted is successful, but you're not worried about the stats. You're worried about winning the game and getting possessions any way you can. So, they do a good job of shutting off here. I believe there's an attackman being shut off out of the screen over here, right? So you've got defenseman here. You've got defenseman, as far away as his speed allows, about 40 yards away from the play. And you've got another one outside the play here, right? With the trailing midfielders are also, covered by D-middies, right? There's a D-middie here, and there's a D-middie within that other circle, right? That's right here. So this is a really tough situation. If they survive this, great. They're playing offense after, surviving and doing that for 25 seconds. If they have to do that over the course of the game, that's really tough to do, right? And that's what you're trying to do. You're kind of playing the odds here, right? So, the next play, they do a good job of closing off. This D-middie steps up and makes this really tough, and this defender doesn't help out his teammate, and it leads to a turnover, right at the midfield line, right? They're able to push him over, and now they're going the other way in a face-off that they basically had conceded the clamp, right? So the goal of this and hopefully what we understand from this presentation is that you don't have to win clamps to be really good at facing off. It makes it easier, but you don't have to be winning, over 50% of clamps to be over 50% facing off, right? There's ways to put a pole, you force the ball back. There's ways to tie up face-off guys and make it a 3-on-3, and then you're working on ground balls. So there's a lot of different ways. And of course, we'll address when we go to the drill, what you should be working on when you are winning clamps, because there's nothing more frustrating as a face-off coach, as a head coach, or as a player. When you win the clamp, you feel like you should, have every, power to win possession. So when you don't win possession, it's momentum for another team, right? And it's just it sucks when you win a clamp and you don't, you don't convert that to a possession, right? Possessions are so critical in our game that you have to, be able to convert those, and not give away free possessions, right? So I see a couple questions popping up here in the chat. I'll address those after we go through the drill. We'll get through the drill quickly so we have time for questions. And if it's about a certain clip, just reference that and we'll be able to go back to the clip. So here, this is one of my favorite drills when we get time with the wings. And this is something that, it's tough to do every day because wing guys are often, sometimes they're close defensemen, so the defense may be doing something. Sometimes they're offensive middies who need to be doing offensive stuff. So, I recommend at least once a week, try to get a good 15, 20-minute segment where you can have your face-off guys and wing guys, participate in a drill, right? And our face-off guys recommended that to us. They thought it was really important that they get reps with the wings, and just the more live face-offs they can get, the better. And with the wings, it's tempting to just kind of, put the ball down and face off a bunch just to get reps at it. But what I find so critical, and I've learned from Coach Byrne, he's opened my eyes to a really cool way of teaching it, is, you have to break down, every little thing you do, right? It has to be broken down to minute details. So it's, when you're doing a ground ball drill, right, you don't start with, just a 3-on-2. You start with one guy scooping a ball on his own, right? And that goes for all teaching. That's not just facing off. So what we do here is we have guys lined up on the wing. We bring the wings in so that we're not sprinting 20 yards every time, and to make it harder on our face-off guys. And we only have one side going at a time. And what we're doing, and we do this drill in a variety of ways. In this version, we have one face-off guy winning the clamp, the other guy, forcing the ball back so that it goes to the defensive end, and then having a wing jump the ball and him having to survive that, right? And he could jump, and it could be a jump double, right? Or it could be, a jump and a drop from the Crimson team. So white's going to win it here. But, what I want you to see is the other thing we work on is the white number 19 here. His goal, he knows what the drill is. And I don't want guys to pretend they don't know the drill. He's trying to box out the defenseman right here and keep him away from this face-off, so that the white face-off guy has a room to escape and get past the midfield line. So the goal is to either make one pass after you win the ball or get past the midfield line. And for the Crimson team, it's to make it as difficult as possible. Are they going to stop them or cause a turnover? Probably not. But in a game, if we had another wing, we had attack riding, right, where if we make them double move or make this difficult, they're going to end up going back, and we consider that a win if we're not going to win a clamp, right? So we watch this. Again, we would rotate, right? We see our face-off guy gets to his feet quickly, the Crimson guy. That's something that I find really important. If you're going to lose, right, if you feel yourself losing, even if you're in a tie-up, if you start feeling yourself kind of 40-60, you're losing the ball, get to your feet and play defense. It's rare that you're going to be able to overpower a guy as he starts getting over the ball. And I think if you make the first move to get up and play defense and be athletic, you're going to have a chance to challenge the ground ball more than you're going to be able to, re-jam and win the clamp. So, we see the white wing doesn't do a great job here. The Crimson pole gets a good job, gets a good break, is able to jump, and they execute a pretty decent switch, right? So they end up causing a turnover here, and that's the point of the drill is partly it's for, the Crimson team to be working on what happens when we lose clamps. How are we going to win some possessions? And for the white team, when we do win clamps, how do we make sure that we survive that? We survive either it's a pole jumping us or a short stick chasing us and throwing one-handed checks, right? How do we survive that and get possession to our team that's so critical? So the next rep here, we see the white guy gets to his feet. The Crimson guy gets to, pulls the ball back, and again, we don't do a great job, boxing out. If we watch this far side here, right, watch who gets off the line quicker, right? We want our guys to make contact. In this particular situation, this guy would have defensive responsibility, so he may not even be breaking to the ball right away. So the Crimson guy really has to, keep his wing guy away from the ball long enough that our guy can catch the ball or scoop the ball, get his head up and escape and find the right outlet. So we see here he starts to make good contact, but the white guy kind of, sheds him. If you've been watching Coach Burns' presentations, this is a really good job of shedding and then gets to make the first play on this guy before he really gets his head up, right? And they end up double teaming this, leaving a guy open. But if he never gets his head up, that's probably a good opportunity to double, and he ends up throwing the ball away. All right, so last clip here. Right, this one's a little better. We see, white again is winning, pops it. We see the white wing guy doing a better job of holding him off and making contact. He keeps him hip to hip here. He's not able to break to the ball, and then he breaks. And as soon as, he releases his, man releases to go double the ball, he breaks and gets his stick up to be an outlet, right? So now, he doesn't end up getting the ball, and he may want to escape, or we may have wanted to throw that to him. But at least he was able to get a full head of steam, hold his guy off, and this is a good job by the white team of escaping. His head's up, right? If he had to, he could roll back and throw an easy pass to the defense, and this is a really good scenario for them, right? So this drill, and we do this a lot of different ways. Maybe we'll do it from a 50-50 where both face-off guys are if you can see my screen, their heads are already both halfway over the ball. So it's going to be a tie-up, and it's going to be a little longer rotation from the face-off guys. We'll do it where one guy's on his feet as if he already lost the clamp. So one guy's over the ball, kind of in a 3-point stance with his feet with his hands on the ground over the ball, and the other guy over top of him as if he had just gotten to his feet and is ready to throw his first counter or make a defensive move, right? There's a lot of ways to do this with just a 2-on-2. And then as you get better and you have more time, add the 3-on-3 component, and there's more communication to it. right? But start small, and we actually start with this, without even 2 face-off guys. A lot of times we'll just have 1 face-off guy and 2 wings, and the wing guy has to box out his guy while the face-off guy pulls it to himself, or he has to pull it to the wing and he has to box him out and then break on the ball. There's a lot of different avenues with this drill, but start small and build it up. And I think what's really important is giving your guys time to, do this in practice, right? Even if you don't know how to coach face-offs, what the technique of it, but nothing I've said has been about the technique of how to face off, right? It's about incorporating wings. It's about, first time ground balls. It's about, boxing guys out and being physical and understanding what you're watching at the face off, more than, teaching, how to clamp and how to get to your feet and how to defensive exit and all of those things. Those are things that are important, right? But not everybody has a luxury, especially at the face-off level, of having a really, knowledgeable face-off guy on their staff. So these are things to work on to continue to, make it more than a one-on-one battle at the X. So with that said, I'll go through some questions I saw come through. If you have a question, put it in here. And again, if it rolls too far over 5 o'clock, we will, we'll end up, you can email me or email Coach Byrne, and we'll be able to connect offline. So let's start with the first question here. What are the advantages, disadvantages to putting your long pole either on the left or right wing of the face-off? Do you have a preferred wing side for your long pole? I think, traditional facing off, you normally put the long pole on the non-draw side of your face-off guy. So if we go back here, right, Greg's draw side, meaning to his left, which way he would pull the ball out, it is a short stick, and there's a long pole on his non-draw side. The only time that I think it's valuable, and not the only time, but I think a time that it is really valuable to flip it is if you're able to force the guy. Let's go back to Sexton here. So let's say the face-off guy was here, or the LSM was here, and you knew that your pole could force him that way, or your face-off guy, could force him towards that side, then I think it's valuable to put him over there. A lot of guys will defensive exit and almost, go more here and then out that way, because most guys are right-handed, so they want to turn to their right hand. So it could be beneficial to move him there and put him, 5 to 7 yards down the wing line, knowing, hey, we're not going to get beat forward, right? That's not an option. We're going to force him here, turn to his strong hand, let him think he's escaping, and then there's an LSM meeting him, and our face-off guy can then drop and find his man. So I think there's time to move him around, but traditionally you put him on the non-draw side and you have him protect the break. So, if we were losing face-offs and nothing was working, we're just bringing him in behind the face-off here to make sure that if this guy wins it forward to right here, that's where he's going to pull the ball, right to our LSM, hopefully down the wing line, meeting him here. Next question. At the high school level, how can we force the other team to go back to their goalie? I know this is more philosophy-based and maybe something we can create. The other team doesn't teach it. To follow up, is there anything we can do to get creative in jump doubling the ball carrier to cause teams to consider going back to the goalie after scouting us? Hopefully I addressed that a little bit in the drill that we did. I think watching that, you see how, there can be communication on if a pole is able to jump the face-off guy and the face-off guy is able to drop. But I think what's really important is start basic, right? The first thing I said when drilling this is start with, 2 face-off guys, and one guy is not allowed to clamp. So in this scenario, right, Sexton is your face-off guy, and he's not allowed to clamp. And this guy is able to try to go forward, right? But he has to prevent him from going forward. And then from there, it's about the pursuit. So if he wins it back, right, if he goes back this way, he's obviously going to want to turn one way or the other and escape, right? He's going to want to try to get upfield. And Sexton does it here, even if there's not a wing guy in this, right? So you don't want to dig too long on his bottom hand, because it allows him to turn and get upfield quickly. What you want to do is concede and let him go a few steps back, and then take a good angle to then let me get back to that spot. I apologize. Right? So you want to be able to take this angle here and cut him off, because what you're hoping for and what your goal as this face-off guy is to force him to double move. So what I mean by that is turn here is one move. If you can get him to split or have to roll away again as a second move, that gives enough time. If your attackmen are riding hard and committed to this, they're sprinting up from the box and they're now there. And he either has to survive this double team all the way to the midfield line, or he's going to have to go back and use the guys that the attackman left, and now you're into a ride, right? And now it's not about the face-off guys. You're actually at an advantage because they still have a face-off guy on the field, and your guy can stay and ride. So you want to be able to, use that advantage. So, the goal is set it up as a drill where this guy, just these two, he has to turn and get over the midfield line, and this guy has to make him double move by taking a really good pursuit angle. L break or flat break when you get a clean face-off win. Personnel driven. I really think if you have a face-off guy who's a really good decision maker and can shoot the ball a little bit, then go flat break and let him, decide where they're sliding off of and either feed the right guy or shoot the ball. If you don't have that or you don't have, the correct attackman, just run a typical L break, make them slide off that point guy and throw that cross crease pass. I will say, I'm more of a fan of the flat break because I think throwing across your body after winning the ball forward and your stick is mangled a little bit after taking, 15 face-offs throughout the course of a game, that pass becomes a little more dicey. I think that becomes a little more difficult with guys bearing down on you from behind. So, the flat break allows him to throw everything forward and keep everything in front of him instead of having to throw kind of across his body if he's right or left-handed. Depending on, where the point guy is. But I think that's really difficult, depending on your face-off guy. But again, personnel driven. Coach started using the arrows. Appreciate that. What's the best way to take advantage of a dominant face-off man that wins most clams, but not necessarily the best ball handler? I think one way is to do what the Redwoods do here, right? They know they're going to lose a clamp. And they put, John Sexton at the faceoff X, who's an unbelievable takeaway guy, actually used to take faceoffs in high school. So had an idea of what he was doing, and, make this guy work for it, right? You're not going to take the ball away every time, but what you can do is you lock off the wings, right? So you have guys over here, they stay locked off. And from what Greg told me, they wanted to lock off the wings every time to make him handle the ball as much as possible. I think this isn't an uncommon thing where you have a face-off guy who's unbelievable at clamping the ball, but not great at making the first pass or reading a defense and finding where the slide is coming from. So if he has to do that while running away from a long pole or with an attackman sprinting into his face, from the box here, life becomes really difficult. And again, you're not going to cause a turnover every single time, but you're going to make things tough so that, let's say fourth quarter where you need a face-off and this guy knows that he's gotten the crap beat out of him for 20 face-offs during the game. And he's had to read a bunch of different things. They've jumped from the wing over here. They've locked off the wings. They've, forced the ball back and rode the ball. And he's had to think about all this. The odds are more in your favor, than they would have been otherwise if you continue to mix it up and you really make him handle the ball as much as possible. What about the use of double poles? Great question. I think this is becoming more and more popular at the college level. You see a lot of teams doing it and doing it effectively. There's a trade-off, right? I think using double pulls on the wings and a short stick, you know that you have to tie the guy up a little bit, and then your pulls are going to make it really tough to scoop up the ball. The other thing is that, in the shot clock era, you have to sub 2 pulls and a face-off guy. You've got to sub 3 guys, and you've got to survive if they put any pressure on you. If you win the ground ball with 4 short sticks and one of them's a face-off guy plus two long pulls on the offensive end, while they may have had, a D-midi, an LSM, and just one guy to sub, that becomes really tough to handle. So, I think it's a great strategy if you have a guy who can tie a guy up at the face-off X and you're strategic about different ways to use them and create chaos. But there are drawbacks, and want to make sure that we understand those as well. But especially at the high school level, where a face-off guy may not be great, but is at handling the ball, but is dominant at winning the clamp, it's probably a good idea to try to find ways to switch a pull onto him and make him survive that throughout the course of a game. It looks like those. One more from Coach Flanagan is a consistent commenter, is great in every webinar. Do you teach facing the guy on a box out if you are within 5 yards? We do not. I think if you're within 5 yards, if it's a tie up at the faceoff X, we want to stay, probably 5 to 7 yards away and hip to hip with the guy, and stick kind of on their hip so that you could, kind of nudge him or cross check him a little bit and then break on the ball and push him away from the ball. You're not getting boxed in. So if the ball gets pulled too deep, you're now the last guy to it. And also not getting, if you're getting boxed in or not getting boxed out, where if the ball kind of squibbles out in front of you, you're not able to get around the guy in front of you. If the guy that you're facing off against wants to get really close to the pile, then we teach to box in, because that guy, if the ball's not going to stay down there for long. And we saw in John Sexton's, right? And I think this showed it even better as he comes in, right? This guy wants to get right on top of it. So now even the ball does come out, he's not able to pick it up cleanly. There's too many guys around. I think the distance that Harbison and Ray are at back here, right? This is where you would want to be kind of hip to hip, right? You're 5, 6 yards away. If the ball pops out right here, you're still able to compete for it. But if the ball gets pulled way deep, you're not inside of him and letting him get the first chance at it, right? So as you get closer and you're like these two, you would want to do what John Sexton does, which is box him in. You're still able to reach in there and wreak havoc and make this difficult on the face-off guys and on this wing, but you're not sacrificing position. You're not sacrificing, if the ball gets pulled too far, or if the ball gets, kind of dropped right near you. That's a really good position there from John Sexton. Okay, I think that's it. Coach Flanagan, your secret's safe with us. Thank you guys for all this. These have been fantastic. The outreach from coaches has been really cool. It's a lot of fun to be able to give back and still talk lacrosse when I know all of us are missing it. If you have topics, tweet them at us. I saw some suggestions in the chat box. We'll be doing at least one more this week. I know Coach Byrne will be presenting on some different topics. So, thank you guys for tuning into this, and all the coaches. And Coach Hutchinson, Coach Kyle, Coach Bergman, and Coach Byrne, the headmaster, making this all happen. So thank you guys.